Welcome to the Waifu Files, a series dedicated to discovering and celebrating various anime by highlighting their awesome female characters. I'm your host, dai-chan, and this time we'll be looking at the spectacular waifu from Code Geass. Specifically, I'll be focusing on significant characters in the main series, along with the Akito the Exiled films and Lelouch of the Resurrection. There are various spin-off manga and mobile games that introduce certain characters, but to me they're far less iconic. In all, there are 17 waifu that I'll be introducing and rating from a scale of 1 to 5 stars. It'll be my subjective opinion of how excited I'd be to roll them in a gacha. I encourage you to agree or disagree with me in the comments. Overall, Code Geass is a legendary anime created by Studio Sunrise. It has character designs from Clamp, an all-female manga team, as well as the late Takahiro Kimura. Honestly, I think Kimura's contribution to this series is often overlooked. His art is brilliant, and I especially love his work in Dirty Pair Flash. Sadly, he passed away in March of 2023, so I'd like to consider this video to be my tribute to his legacy. Seriously, this show has some of the best waifu in all of anime, due in no small part to his artistic style as both designer and animation director. The story takes place in a fictional world in which the oppressive Britannian Empire invades and colonizes other nations. Our hero, Lelouch, is one of the Emperor's many children, but he was exiled to Japan after the brutal murder of his own mother. Lelouch resents his father's regime, but is forced to lay low with his precious sister Nunnally until one day when he acquires the power of Geass from a mysterious girl named C2. With this power, the ability to command other people to his will, he starts a rebellion hoping to one day stop Britannia's advance. While the story features mecha combat and military strategy, its claim to fame are its compelling characters. In order to convey just how awesome they are, I'll be spoiling parts of their lore, but in a way that should encourage you to check the series out for yourself. So let's start with the main heroine, C2. She's a mysterious, immortal girl who first gives Lelouch the power of Geass. While she appears young, she acts calm and mature, her composure only breaking when it comes to her favorite food, cheese pizza. This is because she's been alive for 300 years, originally born as a peasant during the Middle Ages, when she was taken in by a nun who granted her the power of Geass. This nun was a code-bearer, an immortal being with the power to give others Geass. Her only way to break free of this burden was to have one of her retainers take on the code in her stead. Thus, C2 was tricked. Once her Geass had reached full maturity, the nun mortally wounded her such that, in order to survive, she had to inherit the code and its immortality. C2's been alive ever since, enduring all manner of deaths throughout history. She claims she wants to finally die, but in truth, her deepest desire is to be loved, genuinely, without coercion. Back when she was mortal, her Geass power compelled others to love her. All the love she ever received was insincere. Through her bond with Lelouch, she finally has a chance to attain her wish. I love how she's a loyal ally with a soft, sentimental nature hidden beneath all her years of stoicism. We even get to see how she was like as a young girl after she loses her memories for a time. She's both badass and nurturing, with some of the coolest fashion sense out there. Beyond the shadow of a doubt, I award her a full 5 stars. My life is certainly better having her in it. Next up is her rival in romance, the fiery tomboy Kallen Stadtfeld, aka Kallen Kozuki. To the public, she is an ordinary student in Japan attending a prestigious Britannian academy. Her father was a Britannian noble who had a Japanese lover. As a result, Kallen is biracial, but to avoid a life of discrimination under Britannia, she was adopted into the Stadtfeld family, effectively hiding her Japanese heritage. Despite this, she is Japanese at heart and hates having to treat her actual mother as a maidservant in the household. Following in the footsteps of her late brother Naoto, Kallen is secretly a member of a Japanese resistance group, hoping to one day restore Japan's independence. Her team eventually joins Lelouch to become the Order of the Black Knights. Disguised as the Masked Avenger Zero, Lelouch elevates the Black Knights into a formidable military force. At first, Kallen's trust in Zero is broken when she discovers his true identity, but over time she comes to care for him. She fights in a nightmare frame called Gurren, which has an overpowered, badass claw on one arm. This makes her the Black Knight's strongest asset. Kallen has a knack for dressing in really sexy outfits, and her aggressive nature totally puts her on par with C2. As such, I award her 5 stars also. It would be really hard for me to choose between either of these lovely ladies. Next up, we've got Lelouch's sister, Nunnally v. Britannia. When her mother was assassinated, Nunnally got struck by a bullet to the legs, rendering her paralyzed and wheelchair-bound. She was exiled to Japan along with Lelouch, but only after her father, the Emperor Charles, used his Geass on her, making her believe she's blind. As such, she is completely dependent on her brother, and he in turn dotes on her with every opportunity. Despite her disabilities, Nunnally is kind. She treats the Japanese people with respect, and while she sympathizes with their plight, she also wants to befriend her fellow Britannian brothers and sisters. She detests the violence of the Black Knights, and would be heartbroken to learn it was actually Lelouch leading them. When it comes to appeal, I imagine you could plot most waifu on a chart between cute, cool, sexy, and funny. Nunnally definitely falls on the cute side of the spectrum, someone I would sooner want to protect than marry or smash. In that regard, I award her a platonic 2 stars. She's a great character, but certainly not why I'm here today. Speaking of her Britannian siblings, we have Euphemia Lee Britannia, or just Euphy for short. She's Nunnally's half-sister and was put in charge of governing Japan, reductively called Area 11. Euphy is kind and a pacifist at heart, so even though she can't simply go against her father's wishes and free the Japanese people, she tries to implement more amicable policies. As a sign of trust and goodwill, she makes Suzaku Kurorugi, who is only an honorary Britannian, into her own personal knight. She is the perfect candidate to establish peace within Japan, and when she discovers her half-brother Lelouch is the rebel leader Zero, she agrees to unite with him for a better future. Ultimately, however, hers is a tragic tale, as she falls victim to his Geass powers running out of control. She's accidentally ordered by his Geass to mindlessly attack the Japanese people, ruining all the diplomacy she earnestly strove for. Luckily, before this massacre, she was still able to take part in some of the anime's lighter, more fun moments. I award her 3 stars. She's very pleasant, but also a bit too naive for my tastes. While ruling over Area 11, Euphy relied on her older sister, Cornelia, to handle military matters. The two have been together since childhood, and Cornelia's always been very protective of her little sister. She comes to Japan in response to Zero killing her brother Clovis. Euphy's massacre and subsequent death only strengthen Cordelia's hatred for Zero, such that when she discovers his true identity, it's too late for them to make amends. This makes her a very understanding woman. She can sympathize with Lelouch's struggle, his desire to protect Nunnally and avenge his mother, but she refuses to back down from her role, believing that her path is just. I give her 2 stars. She remains a villain, but one that I can respect. Sticking with nobility, we've got Anya Alstreim, an emotionally detached girl piloting a nightmare frame against the Black Knights as part of a counter squad named the Knights of the Round. Honestly, she's a bit of a missed opportunity. Lore-wise, she was one of the people who actually saw Lelouch's mom get gunned down at the Ares villa. This traumatized her, and so Charles responded by erasing her memory of the incident. She was meant to learn proper etiquette within the noble family, but after her memory wipe, she was trained to fight. Aside from being a formidable opponent, her main character moment is getting possessed by the consciousness of Lelouch's mom. She's cute, I guess, but not enough to excite me. I award her 2 stars. My reaction to her is about as lukewarm as her introverted aura. Another of Lelouch's enemies is Villetta Nu, a dark-skinned beauty who serves under her commander Jeremiah Gottwald in battle. She's not a noble, but hopes to earn that recognition through service to Britannia. Villetta is particularly hateful of the Japanese, referring to them as mere 11s. She's ironically opposed to having honorary Britannians in the military, despite that being essentially what she is. On the verge of discovering Zero's identity, she survives a gunshot wound that gives her amnesia. In further irony, she's taken in and sheltered by Kaname Ogi, one of the Japanese rebels she used to fight against. Under the name Chigusa, she lives with and falls in love with Ogi. Eventually, though, her memories return, and she's disgusted by what she's been up to. She returns to her post in the military, and even gets promoted as Baroness, but can't fully shake her feelings for Ogi. It becomes sort of a Romeo and Juliet romance, as the two maintain their love while staying enemies. When the conflict is ultimately put to rest, she marries Ogi and bears his child. Quite literally a waifu. I award her 4 stars for overcoming prejudice and being hot as hell. Suzaku Kurorugi uses a nightmare frame named Lancelot, which was developed by a scientist named Lloyd. Our next waifu, Cécile Croomy, is Lloyd's assistant, which is really underselling her. She's a scientist herself, inventing and shit, but she also fights, and does so in a skin-tight bodysuit. She's one of those crouching tiger hidden badasses, and I'm all for it. I award her 4 stars. Don't sleep on her, sleep with her. This next one's also a scientist, but she works for the rebellion. She's Rakshata Chawla, and she's an Indian engineer who worked her way up the ranks. Despite being a total genius with amazing productivity, she prefers to sit back and relax with a womanly allure. I award her 3 stars. She gets a point for not knowing how to button up her shirt, but then loses that point for smoking tobacco. Next is Kaguya Sumeragi, Suzaku's cousin and head mistress of Japan's Kyoto house. Kaguya met Lelouch when they were children, and she's thrilled to support him as the leader of the Black Knights. She offered herself to become his bride, but was politely rejected due to Lelouch's commitment to C2. Beyond that, she honestly doesn't do much and doesn't get enough screen time, so I award her a platonic 3 stars. She's a bit too formal if you ask me. Now we'll move on to Lelouch's classmates. Head of the student council at Ashford Academy is Millie Ashford. Naturally, that means her family owns the place, and she treats it like her own amusement park by hosting various lavish events, such as making a massive pizza on campus. Rightfully so, she's letting off steam, given how ultimately she'll be forced to marry a Britannian noble. Her school days are her final bastion of true freedom, and she definitely brings to it an invigorating spark. I award her 3 stars, mainly because she's a bit of a clown at times. Millie has a Japanese maid named Sayoko Shinozaki, whom she entrusted to care for Lelouch and Nunnally. I say she's a maid, but she's more of a ninja, honestly, doing a lot of badass shit without being fully recognized for it. There's something to be admired about her quiet loyalty, but I'll only be awarding her 2 stars. She never steals the show, but I suppose it's her job not to stand out too much. Shirley Fenette, however, is a different story. Despite being shy, too embarrassed to confess her feelings for Lelouch, she plays a prominent role in his school life. She is sweet and innocent, which makes her learning about Lelouch's double life as zero all the more tragic. The Black Knights and their rebellion led to her father being killed. She wants to avenge her father, but not by killing the boy she loves. By the time she's willing to accept his ambitions, she is killed by Lelouch's fake brother, Rollo. Well, that's if you're watching the original anime, anyway. For some reason, the film adaptations decided to keep her alive, likely so she could feature in sequels. I'm conflicted about this, as I feel her death served as a profound trigger for Lelouch's anger towards Rollo, as well as his hatred for Geass powers altogether. On the other hand, it's kinda cool seeing her in Lelouch of the Resurrection, though she doesn't do anything of value in that movie. I give her 3 stars. I feel like if I rated her any higher, I'd be unable to accept her fate. Perhaps one way to evaluate waifu would be measuring how pissed off you'd be if the story killed them off. Nina Einstein here is another of Lelouch's classmates, except in her case she's a nasty little xenophobic racist. She's afraid of the Japanese. In her defense, she was taken hostage by the Japan Liberation Front earlier in the series. During that time, she got to meet and develop feelings for Yuffie, whom we've already discussed. Nina's claim to fame is her unrequited lesbianism, which she tames by making love to the corner of a table. You would think Britannian nobles could afford a decent Hitachi or a Sibian or something. Naturally, Yuffie's death breaks Nina's heart, along with her sanity. In a raging hatred of the Japanese, she develops a destructive bomb named Flea, but is horrified when it's actually used in battle, killing 35 million unrelated civilians. She eventually works for Lelouch to develop a countermeasure so that it can never be used again. While this does redeem her somewhat, I feel it's disingenuous to let her off the hook so easily. I give her only 1 star, which, as of this moment, is the lowest she can possibly get. That does it for the waifu featured in the main anime. However, we simply cannot ignore the 2 waifu that appear exclusively in the Akito the Exiled films. These tell a side story that takes place between the anime's first and second seasons, focusing on Britannia's campaigns in Europe. The United Public of Europea, or EU, is at war with Britannia, still holding its own despite Charles possessing the power of Geass. The lead woman is Leila Malcal, a military officer whose Britannian family defected to the EU during her childhood. Past victories have earned her prestige, and she's put in charge of commanding a squad of Japanese immigrants from Paris. It's a dirty job, as this team, the W0 unit, is often sent into dangerous situations with a low chance for survival. She and her main subordinate Akito share a close bond, even though the EU at large treats 11s as disposable pawns. Owning up to this, once their part in the fighting is done, they all leave the army to become traveling gypsies. Hell yeah! Leila's awesome, but not as much as the folks from the main series. I award her 3 stars. I'm due to re-watch these films, and maybe after that I could even bump her up to 4. For me though, the main attraction of Akito the Exiled is Ayano Kosaka. She starts out as part of a small Japanese terrorist group before getting recruited into W0. Perhaps I should say that she was more so forced into the EU's military, as she and her cohorts immediately try to escape. They'd rather be criminals than slaves, but her attitude changes when Leila vows to fight alongside them, even using drones to make their battles safer. Ayano cherishes a kodachi that reminds her of her old samurai heritage and joins the rest of her team as a gypsy. I award this absolute beauty 5 stars. I'd go humpback whale to get her. Well, metaphorically. I still hate the gacha, but my lord, look at her dance. The very last waifu for now is introduced during Lelouch of the Resurrection. She's our antagonist, Shamna, the queen and holy priestess of a kingdom called Zilkstan. Although the Zero Requiem was meant to bring about world peace by treating Zero as the ultimate villain of humanity, it didn't fully end the conflict. Many years of warfare made Zilkstan reliant on its soldiers as a source of wealth. No longer able to sustain themselves in peacetime, Shamna and her people try to bring about more bloodshed so that her country doesn't fall to ruin. She's got a unique Geass power that lets her travel back in time 6 hours upon dying. That means if she ever fails, all she has to do is keep trying until she finally changes her fate. It's an interesting gimmick, because without Lelouch, nobody would be able to tell what she was up to. Shamna makes for a very good femme fatale, one that I award 3 stars. It's a shame that she has to be evil, but without her, we wouldn't have Kallen or C2 in this hot desert clothing, so I'd say it's totally worth it. For me, that does it for all the noteworthy waifu in the Code Geass franchise. Like I said, this doesn't include any of the mobile or manga spin-offs. Feel free to disagree with my ratings. It is all a matter of subjectivity after all. Even better, I'd love for you all to comment which anime or game series I should cover next.
Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all our anime lore, discussions, and Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or a YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like spicy exclusive vids and early access.
As always, celebrate your fandom. I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters: Video Gamer 75, Dante Pendragon, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, The Nonchalant Ostrich, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Lord Omagoden, Free Brick, Olympian Doll, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, King Kobo, Scout, Andre Foster, Jared Kraus, Zamas Autonomous, Yukie Eros, Crow Kalem, Saul Soto, Sogai CH, Caitlin P, Vladimirovna, The Taz 96, Kengo X 77, Alester Bernadotte, Mickey D 343, and Akakaze Yume. Thank you all so much.